Spider-Man, Spider-Man, doing whatever a Spider-Man does. Spider-Man, Spider-Man. I can't actually remember the rest of the song, but I know it involves a pig.
That's right, I went to my friendly neighborhood game store to pick up a copy of Marvel Crisis Protocol so that I can paint up our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Based on the response that I got in my last video where I talked about 5 alternate war games other than Games Workshop products, you guys really seem to lean towards Marvel Crisis Protocol, which worked perfectly for me because you see, I've actually wanted to paint some of these models for a while, and if you watched that video where I talked about those games, I actually had a professor who worked on Marvel Comics. His name is Tom Lyle. He worked on not only Maximum Carnage, like he was one of the artists on it, he also designed the original Scarlet Spider outfit for Spider-Man, and he passed away relatively recently. It still feels very fresh in my head, and I never really did anything to really pay tribute to him, and this is gonna be my opportunity to do that. Not only did he just have a significant, just influence on my life when I was at school, learning from him as a professor, he taught me a lot, and I just really want to do this for him as well as to try out painting something that's not Games Workshop, because while I've done that a few times, I've painted a little bit of Star Wars Legion, I have painted some WizKids miniatures and everything. They, haven't done super well on the channel, so if you do like this content, make sure to like and let me know down in the comments so that I can know that you guys actually want to see me paint more of this. But I also just want to explore other genres and other types of miniatures because there's a whole bunch out there, and there's some really nice quality ones, including what Atomic Mass is making in Marvel Crisis Protocol. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get working on our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. After priming both portions of the model using Corax White to try to achieve the best possible opportunity to get the purest color out of all the colors that I'm going to be painting onto this model, I'm going to go ahead and actually start with the base because frankly guys, I'm a little nervous to be working on this. Normally I work on Games Workshop models, which this is still a hard plastic very similar to those. However, it is still a different aesthetic and has a different final, it's got a different level of detail than what I'm used to. So I'm a little nervous to start this, which is why I'm starting with the base so I can ease myself into it. And what I'm going to be doing is applying a light gray tone. In this case, I'll be using Administratum Gray to all of the concrete surfaces, including the sidewalk and the rubble where the steel beam is sticking out. Once that has been thoroughly coated, I'm going to go ahead and pull out a little bit of Basilicanum Gray because it's a gray stone and it's my go-to. And I'm going to be using Basilicanum as a little bit more of a wash rather than a full contrast coating. We're going to thin it down just slightly, and we're going to make sure that it doesn't pool too much onto the surfaces of the concrete itself where the sidewalk is. On the rocks and the rubble, we're going to let that settle into the grooves a little bit more, and we're not going to worry if it darkens it a bit, but the sidewalk itself, I want to remain fairly pale. Once the Basilicanum has had time to thoroughly dry, I am pretty happy with how it's looking. It's settled into all of the recesses and divots on the concrete really well, and they're popping beautifully. But I want to brighten up the color a little bit more, so I'm going to pull out a bit of Dawnstone and use this to dry brush over top the entire portion that I just painted, really not worrying about if I hit that steel bar because we'll be painting it separately later. Once that's done, I'm still not quite satisfied with how bright it's looking, so I'm going to pull out a little bit of white, and without actually cleaning my dry brush of the Dawnstone I had previously just used, I'm going to just blend it together, creating an even paler sort of white gray tone, and applying this very lightly to just the most raised edges of the base. This is going to give me one additional highlight, and I really, really like how this is turning out. Now that the concrete is done, I'm going to go ahead and turn my focus to that steel beam we saw earlier. For that, I'm going to use a bit of lead belchers because I actually wanted something that was a little bit darker than the natural steel I've been sort of gravitating towards recently. And I also wanted to have it a little bit of a sort of brown tone, which lead belchers does. It has a very slight sort of yellow hue to it, and I really, really like that. Thought it would be totally appropriate for this steel beam. So we're gonna get that coated up, and then we're gonna come back to some Basilicanum Gray. This time, we're gonna thin it a little bit more because I am actually going to be treating it as a wash. In fact, I'm gonna use a little bit of contrast medium in there to really make it smooth and thin it down. This I'm going to apply over that steel beam and then also the rubble that we had previously painted up and dry brushed. This is going to re-emphasize some of those grooves, make it stand out a little bit darker than the concrete walkway, which I think is just gonna have a little bit of a nice pop to it without being overly like in your face about it. Look at this really cool base that I've painted up, because I've finished Spider-Man's base, Spidey-Man, and I'm actually really happy with it. I want to compliment to Atomic Mass. My apologies.
Other way.
I see, this way. I want to compliment Marvel Crisis Protocol and Atomic Mass for honestly providing some relatively simple but very cool bases for their models. Normally with Games Workshop, often for like the troops and stuff, you just get the flat, normal, like, you know, round bases with no texture or anything, and you have to do a lot of work to like add something to it. Marvel Crisis Protocol actually gave us sculpted bases for all of the models that it comes with, which makes a small amount of sense because there's a lot fewer models in this game that you're having to collect up. So maybe they're a little more flexible with it, but I thought it was really cool. It was kind of a surprise to me because I didn't expect that. Although now that I think about it, every picture I've ever seen of Marvel Crisis Protocol has these kinds of bases, and it didn't click with me. So that's just on me, but I was really shocked. I was very pleased, and I'm really happy with actually how it's turned out. It's very simple, but like, I really think it's gonna work for the Marvel universe, and I think it's gonna go and blend with their terrain really well, the design on this is all very nice. The model went together really well. So now that I'm done with the base, let's go ahead and actually work on Spider-Man and play with some pops of color, because that's partially why I did this. I really, like, superheroes speak to large, bold colors all the time. Like, all of their artwork is very vibrant, and that is totally my jam and style. Partially why I wanted to pick up Marvel Crisis Protocol and actually pick up some stuff, or paint some stuff. So let's do it. Let's get to Spider-Man. Oh, hey, didn't see you guys there. Well, while you're here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. Okay. I'm feeling a lot more confident. Let's go ahead and get on to painting our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, because he's really cool and I'm really excited for this. So what we're going to do is I'm gonna be treating this a little bit differently than how I would normally treat it, because I have some very specific color tones that I have in mind for this model, and I don't think my contrast paints are gonna cut it by themselves. So what I'm going to do is lay down 2 base colors as a foundation before I move on to my contrast paints. And the first one is going to be a little bit of Thousand Suns blue. This is going to go over all of the smooth surfaces on Spider-Man's, I almost called it armor. I guess technically it's kind of armor modernly, but it's really not in this, it's just his suit. So we're gonna put this on all the smooth portions of the suit, not really caring if we get this color onto any of those sort of raised seam edges, which we'll be painting up later. Once that is done, we're going to go ahead and take some Wild Rider Red, which is going to look really, really orange next to this blue. And you're probably gonna go, wow, that does not look like Spider-Man's colors at all. Don't worry, we're going to fix that in a bit. But for right now, we need to get this Wild Rider's Red down and put that on all of the portions that have the webbing. Now, I am going to be a little bit more careful here with this color because I don't want to overwhelm the webs and fill in those little details too much, so that the next steps that I'm going to be applying can actually do what I'm hoping they'll do and make them really stand out so that you can see them without me having to go in with some fine detail line work. So now that my base tones are down, we're gonna go ahead and pull out my contrast colors. And for the blue, I'm going to use Talisar Blue, which is my favorite of all of the contrast color blues. It's bright, it's beautiful, and it does exactly what I want it to over top the Thousand Suns blue. It turns it into this really just brilliant, deep blue color tone that I think nails Spider-Man blue. Then for the red, we're gonna do the exact same thing, except this time we're gonna be using some Blood Angels red. And what this does over top of that Wild Riders is perfect. It gives you this deep crimson color that I think works perfectly. It starts to fill in all of those little webbing details on his suit and everything, which is perfect, and they're already starting to stand out. However, I want to do something else to them to make them pop a little bit more. But before we get to that step, I do want to take care of all the black details on his suit. And for that, I'm just going to pull out some matte black from Army Painter and apply this with a thin brush to basically have as much control as possible and to make sure that I don't get this color onto any of the nice blues and reds that I've already put down. Realistically, I do think that you could do this step prior to doing the contrast paints while you're still doing your base coating. It probably would have been fine. However, I just didn't and I'm doing it now. This ends up working really well, especially over those emblems on his outfit. And I really love the way they pop, but do make sure, because they are slightly raised up, that you hit the sides of the emblems as well to make sure that they have some depth, because otherwise they kind of look a little bit flat against him. Now that our black details are done, we're gonna go in and we've really only got like 2 more things to do. But my favorite thing, and the thing that I'm hoping works the best, is we're gonna now apply a little bit of Nuln Oil to all of the red portions. Very, very thin Nuln Oil. In fact, I use a couple of dollops of contrast medium, in fact 3 I think it is, to 1 dollop of the Nuln Oil, and this is all that I'm using on the red. Basically, I want this color to simply settle into all of that webbing groove so that it really makes them stand out and really doesn't actually affect the bright red tone that I've gotten from my Wild Rider and Blood Angels combination. And it works perfectly. Now, I am still super excited with how the webbing has looked, but we have one final thing to do, and I need to clean up his eyes a little bit using a little bit of matte white. This is just going to help make them pop. I did get a little bit of the black line work sort of into that section, so this just cleans them up, makes them those big expressive eyes that Spider-Man is known for. With that done, all we need to do now is get him mounted to his base, rim the base with a little bit of black paint, and we can look at the final model.
I don't care that you're not ready. I just want to get your reaction after the wash.
I really freaking like him. Oh my god. Okay, so I had some nerves going into this because I always get nervous whenever I am going to paint a non-GW model, because most of what I've painted in my painting history has been Games Workshop. And I'm used to the olden days where most of the models other than GW were kind of crappy. Or at least in my experience they had been, because I had very little experience with other miniatures other than a few Metal Reapers, some of the old Bones miniatures, which are not very good quality in comparison to stuff nowadays. All of this. I'm so impressed with the fidelity of this, and also just how well the lines came out. So Spider-Man has all those cool detailed little lines, and I just finished doing the wash and it just settled in perfectly, but the reds and blues of my contrast paint combined with the layers that I use from Citadel just still pop and are super vivid, and I'm so happy with how this came out. I have the eyes to clean up, and then I need to attach him to the base, and basically we're done. So let's do that and then look at this model, because I'm so happy. I can't wait to paint more.
And here he is. I really, really love the way that this model came out. I had very little confidence going into this painting because I was just super worried about painting something that wasn't Games Workshop. But it turned out great, and I think Tom would be proud. I wish I could show it to him, honestly, but obviously I can't. But I really think that he would be proud, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit emotional. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It is exactly what I wanted it to be. The colors are perfect. I'm just really happy, you guys. I really am pleased with how this came out. I hope you guys have really enjoyed it as well. I'm gonna wrap this up a little bit quicker than I meant to because I'm about to cry because of just how happy I am and how emotional I am about how I actually think I did my professor really proud without having actually done comics. But if you guys like this and you want to see me paint more Marvel Crisis Protocol, please absolutely let me know down in the comments below, because I really, really enjoyed this. There's a variety of other models that I have from the core set that I want to paint up. Doc Ock is on a short list as just a counter to Spider-Man. as well as I actually really want to paint the Baron, actually. I think that model looks ridiculous. I didn't realize who he was specifically when I saw him, because it was Zemo from the movies, and I didn't recognize the mask at first. Makes me a bad comic fan, I guess. But I thought it was really cool, so I'm also looking at him as a potential, but let me know if you guys want to see me paint more. I had a blast doing this. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it. Anyways, I have been Angela. I've been rambling on. Oh, thank you to my patrons. I don't want to forget you guys. You guys make this possible. Thank you for supporting me on there. You guys are wonderful for that. So thank you guys. And I will see you all next time. I've been Angela. You've been watching Hobby Night. I'm gonna go be emotional now. Bye.